so many things that just lead to so much unnecessary trauma. And unfortunately, someone like me often sees things after it's all gone wrong. You know, we're really taught to be hopeful. So much of what we see from Hollywood, whether or not we want to let it influence us, if you flip on anything related to horses, has such a romanticized version of like what it's going to be and what it can be. And then, you know, those of us who have experienced horses that have fear or trauma or troubles, or even just cold starting, and what it takes to build trust in a horse that just doesn't know anything, that we have unrealistic expectations, honestly. And that's not a good sales pitch when you're doing this for a living. But for me, my priority is to keep the horse safe and to keep the human safe. And you know, a lot of times that's helping people kind of back off maybe some of those like high overreaching goals and give them more realistic things that they're working towards so they can build their skill set, so that they can build their confidence, so they build their understanding of the horse's communication and understanding equine behavior. You know, if I talk to someone so often who's had a long time of riding and I go, well, let's look at the basics, immediately you feel a wall go up, immediately, because people have this feeling of like, well, I've already ridden this much time and I've already ridden this many horses and I already know, and let's go. But when they're standing there showing me problems with their horse's behavior that to me are like the fundamental basics, it's telling me there's holes in their understanding. And yet so many trainers are pressured into doing what the client demands versus, you know, offering what the client needs in order to build their skill set so that they have safe horse handling and they don't create more fear or trauma in their horse. You know, unfortunately, there's a lot of scenarios, whether you're experienced or not, where people are making, again, these emotional decisions of I want it now versus saying, how much can I build up my skill set? And here's another thing is many times, you know, people are trying to do right and they'll take lessons or they'll go to clinics or they'll observe and audit. And, you know, they're really trying. And there's so much information online now, which can be really overwhelming. And that can be a problem in itself. But I find that, you know, for a lot of people, they tend to kind of bounce around, and not that we want to put on the blinders and think that there's only one way. I'm always open to observing and learning, and I encourage people to hear lots of different perspectives because I think there's a lot that can offer you. Even if you just take a little bit of what works for you, I think that can be something that's really good, you know, in adding to your repertoire, because most people aren't out there riding 10 to 15 horses a day. They just are never going to be that person. They're never going to have that exposure. So, you know, the more varied information they can have to start to realize what's out there, hopefully the better educated they can be. But the reality is, I find for most people, you have to start to commit to one approach that mentally and emotionally makes sense to you. I don't know if that makes sense, but I find that too much of the time people start with something and then they try something else and they try something else, and the information they get starts to become very conflicting. And so it's like every time they show up to their horse, they're sort of randomly presenting something new and different, and the horse has no idea what's coming. And so it creates this kind of, you know, fear, defensiveness, anticipation in the horse because he's just not sure of like how the interaction's going to go, and the human's so inconsistent, and the human's not even really clear on what they're doing, why they're doing, and how they're doing things. And so this, again, it's not to say just, you know, pick something and put on the blinders and never, you know, be open to other information. I'm not saying that, but I think sometimes there's too much variance, and so the person who's handling the horse doesn't realize how unclear they are in their communication, and that can also create a lot of that defensiveness in the horse versus helping build trust in them.